He stood at the entrance to the exclusive Imperium Class lane, holding a boarding pass that cost more than most cars. But the gate agent didn't see the billionaire tech mogul. She only saw a black man in a hoodie. With a sneer that could curdle milk, she blocked his path, loudly accusing him of trying to sneak into first class. She thought she was protecting the airline's image. She didn't realize she was about to insult the man who had just bought the entire fleet. When her boss arrives, the silence will be deafening. The fluorescent lights of JFK International Airport hummed with a frequency that seemed designed to induce migraines. For Marcus Sterling, the sound was distant white noise, barely registering over the exhaustion that clung to his bones like a wet coat. He had been awake for 36 hours straight. Marcus wasn't just tired, he was depleted. He had spent the last week in a windowless boardroom in Tokyo, negotiating the acquisition of a microchip logistics firm that would secure the supply chain for his company, Sterling Dynamics, for the next decade. The deal was worth $4 billion. It had required every ounce of his intellect, patience, and charm. Now, with the contract signed and the celebratory sack toast a fading memory, all he wanted was to sleep. He wasn't dressed like the cover of Forbes, though he had graced it 3 times. He was wearing a slate-grey cashmere hoodie that retailed for $600, but looked, to the untrained eye, like something picked up from a discount rack. His sweatpants were bespoke cotton, and on his feet were limited edition sneakers that collectors would kill for. To the average passerby, however, he looked like a tired young man who had perhaps partied too hard, or worse, someone who didn't belong in Terminal 4's most exclusive wing. He adjusted the strap of his leather weekender bag, a custom Hermes piece that had no logos, just impeccable craftsmanship, and navigated the sea of travelers. He wasn't flying private today, because his Gulfstream GEN 50 OR was grounded in London for scheduled maintenance, and he had refused to wait. He needed to be back in New York for his daughter's piano recital by tomorrow morning. Commercial first class on Aerolux International was the next best thing. Specifically, their Imperium class. It was a separate world from the rest of the plane, private suites, showers, and a dedicated gate agent to ensure that the elite never had to rub elbows with the chaos of the general boarding groups. Marcus approached the gate for Flight 882 to London. The general boarding area was a zoo. Families were arguing, a baby was screaming, and the line for Zone 4 stretched back to the food court. But to the left, there was the red carpet, the velvet ropes, the sanctuary of the Imperium lane. Standing guard at the podium was a woman who looked like she had been sucking on lemons since the Reagan administration. Her name tag, pinned strictly to her crisp navy blue uniform, read Brenda Skinner, Senior Gate Agent. She had stiff, sprayed blonde hair that didn't move when she turned her head, and her eyes scanned the crowd with the predatory focus of a hawk looking for a field mouse. Marcus just wanted to get to his seat, drink a glass of champagne, and pass out. He stepped onto the red carpet, his movements slow and deliberate. He didn't make it 3 steps. "Excuse me." The voice was sharp, nasal, and loud enough to cut through the airport chatter. Marcus paused, looking around, thinking she was shouting at someone behind him. "You, in the hoodie!" Brenda Skinner snapped, stepping out from behind her podium. She moved with surprising speed, planting herself physically in front of him, her arms crossed over her chest. "Where do you think you're going?" Marcus blinked, his eyes stinging from lack of sleep. He offered a polite, tired smile. "I'm boarding, ma'am. Flight 882. Brenda let out a short, derisive laugh. She looked him up and down, her gaze lingering on the hoodie and the sneakers with open disgust. "Boarding? The boarding for Zone 5 is that way. She pointed a manicured finger toward the chaotic mass of people near the generic gate. "This is the Imperium Lane. It's for our premium passengers. VIPs, not for overflow." "I know," Marcus said, his voice deep and calm. He reached into his pocket. "I have a tick. Don't bother." She cut him off, holding up a hand. "I've seen it 1,000 times. You kids try to sneak a picture for your Instagrams. Or you think if you just walk confidently enough, we won't notice you don't belong here. Well, I noticed. Turn around and get in the back of the line where you belong." Marcus froze. The fatigue began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp awareness. It wasn't the first time he'd been profiled. It happened at high-end jewelry stores, at luxury car dealerships, and even in the lobby of the building he owned. But usually, people had the grace to be subtle about it. Brenda Skinner had no such grace. "Mom," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady. "My name is Marcus Sterling. I'm seated in 1A. If you'd just scan my boarding pass." "1A?" Brenda scoffed loudly, drawing the attention of several people in the nearby first-class lounge. "Seat 1A is reserved for full-fare Imperium guests. That ticket costs $12,000 one way. Are you telling me you paid $12,000? She raised an eyebrow, her expression screaming disbelief. "Did you win a contest, or did you find a printed pass on the floor and think you could try your luck?" Marcus tightened his grip on his bag. "I bought the ticket. Now, please, step aside." "I will do no such thing," Brenda hissed, stepping closer, invading his personal space. "You are blocking the lane for actual paying customers. If you don't turn around and walk away right now, I'm calling security." The air around the gate seemed to thicken. The ambient noise of the terminal faded as bystanders began to tune into the drama unfolding on the red carpet. People love a spectacle, and Brenda was providing one. Behind Brenda, a younger gate agent, a girl with kind eyes and a name tag reading Sarah, looked up from her computer. She looked horrified. She started to stand up. "Brenda, maybe check his—" "Quiet, Sarah," Brenda snapped without looking back. "I've been doing this for 20 years. I know a scam artist when I see one. I'm not letting this thug disturb our VIPs." The word hung in the air. Thug. Marcus's jaw tightened. He stood at 6'2", broad-shouldered from years of rowing crew at Yale, a fact Brenda clearly wouldn't believe if he showed her the yearbook. He took a slow breath. Getting angry would only validate her narrative. He had to be smarter. He had to be the CEO. "You're making a mistake, Brenda," Marcus said softly. "A very expensive mistake." "Is that a threat?" Brenda's voice rose an octave, pitching into a performative scream meant to alert everyone nearby. "Are you threatening a Federal Aviation employee? Because that is a felony. Do you hear that?" She turned to the line of legitimate first-class passengers forming behind Marcus. An older couple in expensive beige coats looked on with concern, clutching their Louis Vuitton bags. "He threatened me," Brenda announced to the couple. "I'm so sorry you have to witness this riffraff. Security is on the way." Marcus didn't move. He pulled his phone out. "I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you that you are impeding a passenger with a valid contract of carriage. That makes you the liability." He unlocked his phone and brought up the Aerolux app. The screen glowed with the signature gold and black interface of the sovereign status member. The highest tier, invitation only, reserved for the top 0.1% of travelers. "Here," he said, holding the screen out for her to see. "Scan the QR code. That's all you have to do." Brenda didn't even look at the screen. She swatted his hand away. The phone clattered to the floor, sliding across the thin carpet. The sound was like a gunshot. "Oops," Brenda said, her face twisted into a mock apology that was purely malicious. Maybe you should have held on to your burner phone tighter. Now pick it up and get out." Sarah, the junior agent, gasped. She rushed out from behind the podium. "Brenda, you can't do that!" She scrambled to pick up Marcus's phone. She dusted it off and looked at the screen. Her eyes went wide. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. She looked at Marcus, then at the screen, then back at Brenda. "Brenda, look at this status. It says Sovereign Circle. It says board anytime. Brenda, this is real." Brenda snatched the phone from Sarah's hand, barely glancing at it. "Fake app," she declared confidently. "I saw a report on the news about these. They download a fake interface to trick stupid agents. I'm not stupid, Sarah." "Are you?" She shoved the phone back into Marcus's chest. "Nice try. But the font is wrong. I know the fonts." She didn't know the fonts. She was bluffing, digging her heels in because her pride was now on the line. She had made a judgment, and in Brenda's world, she was never wrong. To admit she was wrong now, in front of the wealthy passengers behind Marcus, would be a humiliation she couldn't stomach. So, she doubled down on the lie. "Security!" Brenda shouted, waving her arm at a pair of TSA officers patrolling near the food court. "Over here! We have a breach!" The older couple behind Marcus shifted uncomfortably. The husband, a man with silver hair and a kind face, spoke up. "Excuse me, miss. The young man seems to have a ticket. Why don't you just check it on the computer? It would take 2 seconds." Brenda turned on the customer, her customer service mask slipping entirely. "Sir, I am doing this for your safety. People like him." She gestured vaguely at Marcus's hoodie. "Don't buy $12,000 tickets. They steal credit cards. They steal identities. If I let him on that plane, who knows what he'd do? He could be violent. He's already aggressive." Marcus hadn't moved an inch. He hadn't raised his voice. He stood with his hands at his sides, watching her with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a particularly volatile chemical reaction. "I'm aggressive?" Marcus asked calmly. "You knocked my phone out of my hand." "I defended my personal space," Brenda lied. "And now you're refusing to leave a secure area. That is trespassing." 2 TSA officers, heavy-set men looking for something to do, jogged up. "What's the problem here, ma'am?" "This individual," Brenda pointed a shaking finger at Marcus, "is refusing to leave the first-class lane. He has a fake ticket, a fake app, and he threatened me. I want him removed from the terminal immediately and put him on the no-fly list." The lead officer, a man named Officer Miller, turned to Marcus. He put his hand on his belt, near his taser. "Sir, step away from the podium." "I have a valid ticket," Marcus said, looking Miller in the eye. "I am a Sovereign Circle member. Check the manifest." "Sir, I'm not going to ask you again," Miller barked, his adrenaline spiking because Brenda had used the word threatened. "Grab your bag and step back, or we will escort you out in cuffs." Sarah, the junior agent, was shaking. She was typing furiously on her terminal. "Wait! Officers, wait!" she cried out. "I'm pulling up the manifest right now. Seat 1A, Marcus Sterling. It's here. It's valid. He checked in via the concierge desk in Tokyo." Brenda spun around. "I told you it's a glitch, Sarah. He probably hacked the system. Look at him. Does he look like he just came from a concierge desk? He looks like he slept in a dumpster." The commotion had now attracted a crowd. Travelers from the economy line were pulling out their phones, sensing a viral moment. Cameras were pointed squarely at Brenda and Marcus. Marcus saw the phones. He knew that whatever happened next would be on the internet within 10 minutes. He had to end this. "Officer," Marcus said, ignoring Brenda and focusing on the TSA agent. "I'm going to reach into my wallet. I'm going to pull out my identification and my credit card. I am doing this slowly." Officer Miller hesitated. The crowd was watching. The junior agent was yelling that the ticket was real. "Go ahead, slowly." Marcus reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a slim, carbon fiber wallet. He extracted two things. One was his driver's license. The other was a heavy, matte black card made of anodized titanium. It wasn't just a credit card. It was the American Express Centurion card. The real, black card. But it was even rarer than the standard Centurion. It had a small, diamond-encrusted chip in the corner, a bespoke customization offered only to clients who spent over $50 million a year. He held them out. "Brenda," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. "You said I couldn't afford the ticket. This card has no limit. I could buy this plane. In fact, I could buy this airport if the zoning laws allowed it." Brenda looked at the card. She recognized it. She knew exactly what it was. Her stomach dropped, a cold stone of dread settling in her gut. But the cameras were rolling. The crowd was murmuring. Panic set in. If she admitted she was wrong now, she looked like a racist fool. If she stuck to her guns, maybe, just maybe, she could spin it. He stole it. That had to be it. "Stolen," Brenda declared, though her voice wavered slightly. "He stole it. A guy like you doesn't have a Centurion card. You probably mugged someone in the parking lot." She turned to the officers, desperation creeping into her eyes. "Arrest him. He's in possession of stolen property. Look at the name on the card. Marcus Sterling. That sounds like a fake name anyway." "My name is Marcus Sterling," Marcus shouted, finally losing a fraction of his cool. "And if you don't check that computer right now, you are going to be unemployed before this plane takes off." "I am the senior agent," Brenda screamed back, her face red and blotchy. "I decide who boards, and you are not boarding. Get him out of here." Officer Miller looked at the card, then at Marcus's ID. The names matched. The photos matched. He looked at Brenda. "Mom, the ID looks real." "It's a good fake," Brenda shrieked. She grabbed the phone on her desk. "I'm calling the station manager. I'm calling the police captain. I want this man in a cell." She dialed a number furiously. "Mr. Cross? Mr. Cross, it's Brenda at Gate 42. I have a violent intruder. Security is being useless. I need you down here now." She slammed the phone down and smirked at Marcus. "The regional director, Alexander Cross, is in the building today. He's coming down personally. And when he gets here, you're finished. He hates scammers even more than I do." Marcus's expression changed. The anger evaporated, replaced by a strange, unreadable look. It almost looked like amusement. "Alexander Cross is here?" Marcus asked. "Yes," Brenda gloated. "He's upstairs in the lounge. He's a personal friend of mine. He trusts my judgment implicitly. So you might as well run now, boy." Marcus let out a short sigh. He put his wallet back in his pocket. He crossed his arms and leaned against the velvet rope. "Okay," Marcus said. "Let's wait for Alexander." Sarah, the junior agent, was staring at her screen, her face pale. She had just Googled Marcus Sterling. The search results were filling her screen. Tech mogul, Marcus Sterling, acquires Nippon chip for $4 billion. Marcus Sterling, named Person of the Year. Sterling Dynamics stock soars. "Brenda!" Sarah squeaked. "Brenda, look at the news." "Not now, Sarah." The crowd parted. Striding down the concourse was a man in an impeccable charcoal suit, flanked by two other executives. Alexander Cross, the regional director for Aerolux. He looked annoyed to be summoned, checking his watch. Brenda straightened her jacket. She put on her most victimized face. She pointed at Marcus before Cross even reached the carpet. "Mr. Cross, thank God you're here," she cried out. This man assaulted me, threatened the passengers, and is trying to board with a stolen ticket and a fake black card. I told him to leave, but he's refusing." Alexander Cross stopped. He looked at Brenda. Then he looked at the man in the hoodie leaning against the rope. Alexander's face went completely white. He didn't look at Brenda. He rushed forward, pushing past the TSA officers, his hand extended, ignoring protocol entirely. "Mr. Sterling," Alexander gasped, his voice trembling. "Marcus! Good Lord, is that you?" The silence that fell over Gate 42 was absolute. The silence that had fallen over Gate 42 was heavy, suffocating. It was the kind of silence that usually precedes a natural disaster. Brenda Skinner stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, her finger still pointing accusationally at Marcus Sterling. Her brain was misfiring. She had expected Alexander Cross to storm in like a battalion commander, demanding the intruder be thrown to the ground. Instead, the regional director of Aerolux, a man who terrified his subordinates, was currently bowing slightly, his posture radiating subservience. "Mr. Sterling," Alexander repeated, his voice cracking. I had no idea you were flying with us today. The VIP manifest. I didn't see the alert." Marcus didn't shake the extended hand immediately. He let Alexander's hand hang in the air for a painful 5 seconds, a lifetime in corporate power dynamics. Finally, Marcus offered a brief, firm grip, then released it, as if touching something mildly unpleasant. "I didn't want a fanfare, Alexander," Marcus said, his voice smooth but carrying a dangerous undercurrent. "I just wanted to get home to my daughter. I've been in meetings for a week. I'm tired, I'm hungry, and I'm wearing sweatpants." Marcus looked at Brenda. "Apparently that last part is a crime in your terminal." Brenda's survival instinct kicked in, overriding her common sense. She couldn't process that she was wrong. In her mind, this was a trick. A con. "Mr. Cross," Brenda interrupted, her voice shrill. "Don't listen to him. He's a hustler. I'm telling you, the credit card is fake. The app is a hack. He's probably conned you too. Look at him. He's wearing a hoodie." Alexander Cross spun around so fast he nearly lost his balance. The look he gave Brenda was not friendly. It was the look of a man watching someone juggle lit dynamite in a gasoline refinery. "Miss Skinner," Alexander barked, his face flushing a deep, angry red. "Be quiet. Right now." "But sir," Brenda persisted, desperate to regain control of the narrative. "He threatened me. He assaulted me. He's a danger to the flight." "The only danger to this flight," Alexander hissed, stepping closer to her, "is your mouth. Do you know who this is?" Brenda folded her arms, looking down her nose at Marcus. "I know he's a disturbancer." Alexander laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He turned to the crowd, raising his voice so the onlookers, the TSA agents, and the first-class passengers could all hear. "This man," Alexander announced, gesturing to Marcus, "is Marcus Sterling, CEO of Sterling Dynamics. Last year, his company acquired the patent for the navigational software that runs every single plane in our fleet. He doesn't just buy tickets, Brenda. He effectively owns the technology that allows us to leave the ground." A gasp rippled through the crowd. The passengers behind Marcus began to whisper excitedly. Phones were raised higher. Alexander turned back to Brenda, his eyes cold. "Furthermore, Sterling Dynamics is our largest corporate partner. They spend $30 million a year on travel with Aerolux. Mr. Sterling isn't just a VIP. He is the reason you received a bonus last Christmas." Brenda felt the blood drain from her face. Her knees felt weak. The confident fortress of her authority was crumbling brick by brick. But she was a narcissist. She couldn't admit defeat. She pivoted to a new defense. Policy. "Well," Brenda stammered, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. "Well, even if that's true, he didn't present himself properly. He was aggressive. He refused to show his ticket when asked. I was following protocol. The manual states that we must screen for suspicious behavior. A man in a hood, refusing to speak, blocking the lane. I tried to show you my ticket 3 times, Marcus cut in. His voice wasn't loud, but it silenced her instantly. You knocked my phone out of my hand. You called me a thug. You announced to this entire terminal that I was a criminal because of how I look. Marcus took a step forward. He wasn't physically threatening, but his presence was immense. You didn't see a CEO, Brenda. You saw a stereotype, and you enjoyed it. I saw the look in your eyes. You liked making me feel small. You liked the power. I was doing my job, Brenda screeched, tears of rage and fear welling up. I was protecting the first-class passengers from people like me. Marcus finished the sentence for her. He turned to Alexander Cross. Alexander, I have a question. Anything, Mr. Sterling, Alexander said, sweating profusely. Does Aerolux support this? Marcus gestured to Brenda. Is this your brand values? Because if it is, I have my legal team on speed dial. I can void our corporate contract by 5 p.m. today. There's a clause for the reputational damage. I'd say being racially profiled and accused of theft by your senior staff counts. Alexander Cross looked like he was having a heart attack. $30 million a year, the navigational software license, the PR nightmare. It would bankrupt the airline. No, 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 Alexander pleaded, holding up his hands. Absolutely not. This is not who we are. This is an isolated incident. A rogue employee. She's your senior gate agent, Marcus pointed out ruthlessly. She said she's your friend. She said you trust her judgment implicitly. Alexander turned on Brenda with the ferocity of a cornered animal. My friend? I don't even know your last name, lady. I've met you twice at company picnics. Alexander, Brenda gasped, betrayed. We had lunch at the mixer. You said I ran a tight ship. I said you were efficient, Alexander yelled. I didn't say you were a liability. You have insulted Mr. Sterling. You have humiliated this company. I want an audit, Marcus said calmly. What? Alexander asked. An audit, Marcus repeated. I want to know if this was a mistake or if this is a pattern. Sarah? Marcus turned to the young junior agent, who was still standing behind the podium clutching the manifest. She jumped. Yes, Mr. Sterling? Check the logs, Marcus said gently. How many people has Brenda denied boarding to in the last 6 months? Specifically, people of color, or people dressed casually. Brenda lunged for the computer. You can't do that. That's confidential personnel data. Officer Miller, the TSA agent who had been ready to arrest Marcus moments ago, stepped in front of Brenda. He put a heavy hand on her shoulder. Ma'am, step back. Miller had realized which way the wind was blowing. He wasn't going down with this ship. Sarah typed with shaking fingers. The silence stretched out for 30 seconds. Then she looked up, her eyes wide with shock. Mr. Cross, Sarah said, her voice trembling. I'm looking at the denied boarding codes under Brenda's login. In the last year, she's flagged 42 passengers for suspicious behavior or invalid documents. 42, Alexander whispered. That's impossible. The average is 2. And, Sarah swallowed hard. I'm looking at the names. Jamal Williams, Mateo Garcia, Tanisha Jackson, David Kim. She looked up. They're almost all minorities, sir, and all of them were later rebooked on other flights with no issues found. The crowd erupted. The evidence was undeniable. It wasn't a mistake. It was a systematic purge. Brenda Skinner looked around the circle of faces. Disgust, anger, judgment. The camera phones were like 1,000 unblinking eyes recording her demise. She had nowhere to run. But the human ego is a fragile, dangerous thing. When cornered, it snaps. "They were suspicious," Brenda screamed, her composure shattering completely. "They didn't belong. I can tell. I have an instinct. I kept this gate pure. I kept the riffraff out so you—" She pointed a shaking finger at the wealthy couple in line. "Could have a nice flight. I did this for you." The silver-haired man in the beige coat shook his head slowly. "Don't bring us into this, madam. You were rude, aggressive, and frankly terrifying. I don't want protection like that." "You're all ungrateful," Brenda spat. She turned to Alexander Cross. "You can't fire me. I'm union. I have rights. I have 20 years of seniority. If you touch me, I'll sue this airline into the ground. I'll claim stress, hostile work environment. He provoked me." She pointed at Marcus. Marcus laughed. It was a genuine, relaxed laugh. He walked over to the podium, picked up his phone, which Brenda had knocked down earlier, and checked the screen. It was cracked. "Hostile work environment," Marcus mused. "You filed a false police report, Brenda. You told these officers I assaulted you. Did I?" He turned to the TSA agents. "Officers, you were here? Did I assault her?" Officer Miller straightened up. "No, sir. You stood 5 feet away. She was the aggressor. And you heard her claim I stole this credit card?" "Yes, sir. She stated it was stolen property." Marcus nodded. "That's defamation, per se, accusing someone of a crime in a professional setting. And the false police report. Is that a crime, officer?" "Yes, sir," Miller said, his face grim. "Filing a false report is a Class A misdemeanor. Depending on the disruption to airport security, it can be a felony." Brenda's eyes darted around. I made a mistake. I was stressed. I didn't mean it." "It's too late for 'I didn't mean it,'" Marcus said coldly. "You wanted to use the law to hurt me. You wanted me in handcuffs. You wanted me humiliated. Now you're going to experience exactly what you tried to serve me." Marcus turned to Alexander Cross. "Alexander, here is my condition. I will get on this plane. I will keep my contract with Aerolux, but only if she leaves this terminal right now. Not transferred, not suspended, gone. And I want her banned from Aerolux properties. If I see her working a gate ever again, I pull the funding." Alexander didn't hesitate for a microsecond. "You're fired, Brenda," Alexander said, "effective immediately, for gross misconduct, discrimination, and violation of Federal Aviation security protocols." "You can't!" Brenda shrieked. "I'm the senior agent." "Give me your badge," Alexander demanded, holding out his hand. "No!" Brenda clutched her lanyard. "Officer," Alexander said to Miller, "this civilian is in a secure area without a valid ID. She is trespassing. Please remove her." The twist of the knife was exquisite. The very words she had used against Marcus were now being used against her. Officer Miller stepped forward, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Brenda Skinner, I need you to hand over your badge. You are no longer an authorized employee." "Get away from me!" Brenda swung her handbag at the officer. It was a fatal error. Miller ducked the bag and grabbed her wrist. "Stop resisting! Ma'am, turn around!" The second officer moved in. Within seconds, Brenda was spun around, her face pressed against the very podium she had ruled like a tyrant for 20 years. The metallic click-click of the handcuffs echoed through the silent gate area. "You're hurting me," Brenda wailed, the fight draining out of her, replaced by the terrified realization that her life was over. Sarah, tell them I'm your boss." Sarah stood by the computer, tears in her eyes, not of sympathy, but of relief. She looked at Brenda, then looked at Marcus. "You're not my boss anymore, Brenda," Sarah said quietly, "and you were never a leader." "I demand to speak to the manager," Brenda screamed as the officers hauled her upright. "I am the manager," Alexander Cross said, adjusting his tie, "and I'm pressing charges for the disruption." As they began to drag Brenda away, down the long concourse of Terminal 4, she kicked and screamed, creating the exact scene she had accused Marcus of causing. The onlookers held up their phones, capturing the senior agent being frog-marched past the food court, past the duty-free shops, and out of the kingdom she had abused. Marcus watched her go. He didn't smile. He just felt a deep, exhausting sense of closure. He turned back to the podium. Alexander Cross was wiping sweat from his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "Mr. Sterling," Alexander stammered, I cannot apologize enough. We will upgrade you to the presidential suite on the plane. We will comp the ticket. We will—" "I don't want a free ticket, Alexander," Marcus said, his voice hard. "I can afford the ticket. I want you to fix your culture. You saw those 42 names Sarah found? I want you to contact every single one of them. Apologize, refund them, and give them the respect they deserved." "Done," Alexander promised. "Consider it done immediately." Marcus looked at Sarah. The young agent looked terrified that the wrath of the billionaire might turn on her next. "And her," Marcus said, nodding at Sarah. Sarah flinched. "She tried to stop it," Marcus said. "She checked the manifest. She stood up to her superior. That takes courage." Marcus looked at Alexander. "Promote her. She's your new senior gate agent." Sarah's jaw dropped. "Me? But I've only been here 2 years." "Experience means nothing if you don't have integrity," Marcus said. "You saw the human being, not the hoodie. That's the qualification." "Yes, absolutely," Alexander agreed instantly, eager to please. "Sarah, you're in charge of Gate 42. Get a new team together." Marcus finally relaxed. The tension in his shoulders dropped. He picked up his battered weekender bag. "Now," Marcus said, rubbing his eyes. "Can I please just board the plane? I really need a nap." "Right this way, Mr. Sterling," Sarah said, beaming, scanning his boarding pass with a shaking hand. The machine beeped a happy, green tone. Marcus walked down the jet bridge, leaving the chaos behind. He thought it was over. He thought the drama stayed at the gate. He was wrong. As he settled into seat 1A, sinking into the plush leather and accepting a glass of Dom Perignon from a flight attendant who treated him like royalty, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his chief of security. "Boss, you need to see this. The video of the gate incident is already viral. 2 million views in 10 minutes. But that's not the problem. We just ran a background check on Brenda Skinner for the lawsuit." Marcus texted back. "And?" The reply came 3 dots, then the message. "She's not just a gate agent. She's the sister-in-law of the vice president of the pilots' union. And the pilots just heard she was arrested. They're threatening to walk out. Flight 882 might not be taking off." Marcus looked out the window. The baggage handlers had stopped moving. The fuel truck had pulled away. The hard karma had hit Brenda, but the blast radius was about to hit Marcus. The cabin of Flight 882 was a masterpiece of engineering. The air was cool and scented with white tea. The lighting was a soft, calming amber. But the atmosphere was toxic. 10 minutes had passed since the "fasten seatbelt" sign should have turned on. Instead, the engines were silent. The hum of the auxiliary power unit was the only sound, a low, mocking drone. Marcus Sterling sat in seat 1A, the glass of Dom Perignon untouched on his console. He watched Alexander Cross, the regional director, pacing up and down the aisle of the first-class cabin, his face a mask of sheer panic. "They won't answer," Alexander whispered, clutching his phone. "Dispatch says the cockpit is refusing to communicate. They've locked the door." Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt. They aren't locked out, Alexander. They're negotiating, or rather, they're striking. They can't strike, Alexander hissed, trying to keep his voice down so the other passengers wouldn't hear. It's illegal. There are contracts. It's not a strike, Marcus corrected him, standing up. It's a safety hold. They're claiming the arrest of a senior gate agent constitutes a security breach that compromises the flight crew's mental readiness. It's a loophole, and the captain is using it to flex his muscle. Just then, the cockpit door clicked and swung open. Stepping out was Captain Richard Vance. He was a mountain of a man, with silver hair, 4 gold stripes on his shoulder, and a face carved from granite. He didn't look at Alexander. He looked directly at Marcus. Vance was old school. He was part of the good old boys network that had run the airline industry for decades. Brenda Skinner wasn't just a gate agent to him. She was part of the tribe. "Mr. Cross," Captain Vance said, his voice deep and gravelly. "I'm scrubbing the flight." Alexander nearly fainted. "Captain Vance, you can't do that. We have a full load. We have Mr. Sterling on board." Vance sneered slightly. "I don't care if the Pope is on board. My flight deck is compromised. You had federal agents drag a 20-year veteran employee, the sister-in-law of Union VP Frank Skinner, out of the terminal like a terrorist. My first officer is distraught. I am distraught. We are not fit to fly under FAA Regulation 117. It was a power play, a brutal, brilliant power play. Vance knew that cancelling this flight would cost the airline $500,000 in refunds and logistics. He was holding the plane hostage until Brenda was released. "What do you want, Richard?" Alexander pleaded. "I can't unarrest her. She filed a false police report." "Make it go away," Vance said, crossing his massive arms. "Call the airport police. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Get Brenda released. Get her apology accepted. And get her back on the schedule. Then we fly. If not, this bird stays grounded, and I call the union rep to file a grievance against you for creating a hostile work environment." Alexander looked at Marcus, helpless. He was caught between a billionaire client and a unionized workforce that could shut down the airline. He was ready to fold. He opened his mouth to agree. "No," Marcus said. The single word cut through the cabin like a razor. Captain Vance turned his glare on Marcus. "Excuse me. This is an airline operation, passenger. Sit down." Marcus didn't sit. He walked forward until he was 2 feet from the captain. He was younger, leaner, but his eyes held the weight of a man who moved markets with a whisper. "Captain Vance," Marcus said calmly, "I admire loyalty, I really do. You're trying to protect your own, but you are picking a fight you cannot win." "I'm the captain." Vance stepped closer, invading Marcus's space. "On this plane, I am God. I decide if we fly, and I say we don't move until Brenda Skinner is free." "Brenda Skinner is a liability," Marcus said coldly. "And frankly, Captain, so are you." "Are you threatening me?" Vance laughed. "I'm a union pilot. You can't touch me. I could punch you right now and claim self-defense, and the union would bury you in court for 10 years. "I don't need to touch you," Marcus said. He pulled out his phone again. "And I don't need to sue you. You mentioned Frank Skinner, the VP of the union? That's Brenda's brother-in-law, right? The man protecting her?" "Frank runs this town," Vance smiled smugly. "One call from him, and cargo stops moving in JFK. So yeah, we're waiting." Marcus tapped his screen. "I'm glad you mentioned Frank, because while you were locking the door, I made a call. Not to the police, not to your boss. I called my boss." Vance frowned. "You're the CEO. You don't have a boss." "I have investors," Marcus corrected. "And one of the largest shareholders in Sterling Dynamics is a private equity firm called BlackRock. And do you know who BlackRock also invests heavily in? The pension fund for the Airline Pilots Association. Vance's smirk faltered slightly. I have the chairman of the pension fund on speaker, Marcus said, holding up the phone. Mr. Holloway, are you there? A voice, crisp and terrifyingly authoritative, boomed from the phone's speaker. I'm here, Marcus. Is this the captain? Marcus nodded to Vance. Captain Vance, meet Arthur Holloway. He manages your retirement fund, all $4 billion of it. Vance went pale. Captain Vance, Holloway's voice crackled. Marcus tells me you are grounding a commercial flight to protest the lawful arrest of an employee who committed a felony against one of our key strategic partners. Is that correct? Sir, it's a safety issue, Vance stammered, his bravado evaporating. It's a blackmail attempt, Holloway cut him off. Now, I've just had a very interesting conversation with Frank Skinner. I explained to Frank that if this flight doesn't take off in 10 minutes, I will be auditing the union's investment portfolio. I might decide that airline pensions are too high risk for our firm to manage. Vance swallowed hard. The silence in the cabin was absolute. Frank Skinner is a smart man, Captain, Holloway continued. He realized that saving his sister-in-law wasn't worth losing the pension fund for 30,000 pilots. He has officially recused himself. He isn't coming to save Brenda. And he isn't coming to save you. Marcus lowered the phone. He looked Vance in the eye. Frank threw her to the wolves, Captain, Marcus said softly, because men like Frank care about power, not family. Brenda is alone in that cell, and if you don't get back in that cockpit, you'll be joining her in the unemployment line. Your pension will be frozen, pending an investigation into misconduct. Do you really want to lose your retirement over a woman who racially profiles passengers? Vance looked at the phone, then at Marcus, then at Alexander Cross. He saw the walls closing in. The brotherhood he thought protected him had just evaporated instantly when money was on the table. The captain's shoulders slumped. The granite face cracked. He looked like an old, tired man. Vance stuttered. I need to perform the pre-flight checklist. Excellent decision, Marcus said dryly. We're running late. Vance turned around, defeated, and disappeared into the cockpit. The door clicked shut. A moment later, the fasten seatbelt sign chimed. The engines roared to life, a high-pitched whine that sounded like victory. The engines of Flight 882 didn't just roar, they screamed with a pent-up energy that vibrated through the floorboards of the Boeing 777. As the aircraft finally lurched forward, breaking the standoff that had paralyzed the tarmac, a collective exhale swept through the cabin. The tension, which had been thick enough to choke on, began to dissipate, replaced by the heavy, gravitational pull of the takeoff roll. In Seat 1A, Marcus Sterling didn't look triumphant. He looked drained. He stared out the window as the runway lights blurred into streaks of white neon. The acceleration pinned him to the hand-stitched leather seat, a physical reminder of the sheer force required to get something this heavy off the ground. It was a fitting metaphor for the last hour of his life. Across the aisle, Alexander Cross sat like a man who had narrowly survived a firing squad. The regional director of Aerolux was pale, his expensive suit now wrinkled, his tie loosened in a way that violated company grooming standards. He was trembling slightly, holding a bottle of water with both hands to keep it steady. As the nose of the plane lifted, piercing the cloud layer and smoothing out into the velvet darkness of the cruising altitude, Alexander unbuckled his seatbelt and practically fell into the empty seat next to Marcus. Mr. Sterling, Alexander said, his voice barely audible over the hum of the cabin air filtration. I don't know what to say. In 30 years of aviation, I have never seen a passenger dismantle a Union blockade with a single phone call. Marcus didn't turn his head. He watched the lights of New York City shrinking below them, a grid of millions of people, millions of stories, and millions of tiny injustices happening every second. "I didn't want to do it, Alexander," Marcus said quietly. "That wasn't a power move. It was a survival tactic. People like Captain Vance and Brenda Skinner, they operate on fear. They think because they hold the keys to the gate or the cockpit, they own the world. They forget that someone paid for the keys." "You saved the airline tonight," Alexander admitted, wiping sweat from his receding hairline. "If Vance had walked, if the flight had cancelled, the media storm would have destroyed us. The stock would have tanked by morning." Marcus finally turned to look at him. His eyes were dark, intense, and utterly devoid of sympathy. "I didn't save the airline, Alexander. I saved my schedule. I have a piano recital to get to. Don't mistake my pragmatism for benevolence." He picked up his glass of Dom Perignon, watching the bubbles rise in a perfect, chaotic chain. "But now that we have some quiet time, let's talk about the future. You promised me a culture change." "Yes," Alexander nodded vigorously. "Absolutely. Sarah is already being processed for the promotion. Brenda is gone. We will issue the refunds to the profiled passengers immediately." "That's the easy part," Marcus said, taking a sip of the vintage champagne. "That's damage control. I'm talking about the rot. Brenda felt comfortable treating me like a criminal because she's been doing it for 20 years without consequence. She felt protected. She felt entitled." Marcus leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a shout. "If I ever fly Aerolux again, and I see a gate agent sneering at a kid in a hoodie, or a family struggling with bags being treated like cattle, I won't call the pension fund. I'll simply buy your competitor, lower their prices to zero, and drive you out of business. Do you understand?" Alexander swallowed hard. The threat wasn't hyperbolic. He knew Marcus could actually do it. "I understand, Mr. Sterling. You have my word. We will retrain everyone, starting tomorrow." While the deal was being sealed at 35,000 feet, a very different reality was unfolding at sea level. In a sterile, fluorescent-lit processing room at the Port Authority Police Precinct, Brenda Skinner was experiencing a level of humiliation she had dispensed to others for decades. The Queen of Terminal 4 was no longer wearing her navy blue blazer. It had been bagged as evidence. She was sitting on a cold, stainless steel bench, shivering in a thin, grey intake shirt. The room smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. There was no red carpet here, no Imperium Lane, just the harsh, unblinking eye of the security camera in the corner. Brenda's hands were shaking as she held the precinct phone. She was allowed one call. Just one. She had saved it for the only person who could fix this. Frank Skinner, the vice president of the pilots' union, her brother-in-law, the man who had bragged at Thanksgiving that he had the CEO of Aerolux in his pocket. Frank would scream at the police captain. Frank would get the charges dropped. Frank would get her job back. She dialed the number with trembling fingers. She knew it by heart. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then the connection clicked. Brenda's heart leapt. "Frank!" she sobbed into the receiver. "Frank, oh thank God! You have to get down here. They treated me like a criminal. They took my badge. That man, that Sterling guy, he's a monster." There was a pause on the other end. A cold, heavy silence. "Frank," Brenda whispered. "Brenda," a voice said. But it wasn't Frank. It was a woman's voice. It was Frank's executive assistant. "Mr. Skinner is unavailable." "Unavailable?" Brenda shrieked. I'm in jail. Put him on." "Mr. Skinner has been advised by legal counsel not to speak with you," the assistant said, her voice robotic and detached. "Given the pending investigation into the pension fund audit and the viral nature of the incident, the union is distancing itself from your actions. Mr. Skinner asked me to tell you that you are on your own." "On my own?" Brenda gasped, the blood draining from her face. "But we're family. I'm his wife's sister." "Mr. Skinner also mentioned," the assistant continued, delivering the final blow, "that his wife is very upset about the potential loss of their pension. He suggests you don't call the house either. Goodbye, Ms. Skinner." Click. The dial tone hummed in Brenda's ear, a flat, monotonous sound that signaled the end of her life as she knew it. She slowly lowered the phone. On the wall opposite her, a small television was playing the 10 p.m. news. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Viral airport meltdown. Senior agent arrested after profiling billionaire." The screen showed the video taken by the passengers. It showed Brenda screaming, face distorted with rage. It showed Marcus standing calm and dignified. It showed her being handcuffed. Millions of people were watching it. Her neighbors, her church group, her ex-husband. Brenda Skinner slid off the bench and sat on the cold concrete floor, pulling her knees to her chest. The fortress of privilege she had built around herself had evaporated, leaving her exposed, small, and utterly alone. The karma wasn't just hard, it was total. Back in the sky, the atmosphere was shifting from tense to tranquil. The meal service had begun, the clinking of silverware on china replacing the earlier shouts of anger. A flight attendant, a young woman named Elena, who looked terrified to approach seat 1A, walked up to Marcus holding a silver tray. On it sat a single glass of champagne. "Mr. Sterling?" she murmured. Marcus looked up from his iPad. "Yes?" "You asked me to take this to the captain," Elena said, hesitating. "I did. But... well, Captain Vance sent it back." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Did he?" "He said he can't drink on duty, obviously," Elena explained quickly. "But he also asked me to give you a message." "Go on." "He said..." Elena took a deep breath. "He said, 'Tell Mr. Sterling that I know when I've been beaten, and tell him the ride will be smooth all the way to London.'" Marcus smiled. It was a small, genuine smile. He took the glass from the tray. "Thank you, Elena. You can take it away." Captain Vance, the man who claimed to be God on his plane, had just conceded. He hadn't just accepted the authority of the CEO. He had bowed to the moral authority of the passenger in 1A. Vance would fly this plane with the precision of a surgeon, terrified that one bump of turbulence might result in another call to Blackrock. He was no longer the king of the cockpit. He was a chauffeur, and he knew it. Marcus reclined his seat fully, the soft leather cradling his exhausted body. He pulled a blanket over himself, a simple wool blanket, not unlike the hoodie he wore. He closed his eyes and thought of his daughter. He pictured her sitting at the piano, her small fingers poised over the keys, waiting for him. He had fought a dragon at the gate, dismantled a union boss, and humbled a captain, all to be there for a 3-minute rendition of Mozart. It was worth it. The plane soared through the night, a silver bullet cutting through the darkness, carrying the man who had walked through the fire and come out not just unscathed, but untouchable. Marcus Sterling's journey through JFK wasn't just about a boarding pass. It was a collision between the old world of bias and the new world of undeniable merit. Brenda Skinner made the fatal mistake of judging a book by its cover, assuming that respect was something she could gatekeep based on appearance. She thought her uniform gave her power, but she learned the hard way that true power is quiet, confident, and rooted in integrity. In the end, the system Brenda tried to weaponize against an innocent man collapsed on top of her. She lost her career, her reputation, and her family's protection, proving that when you dig a grave for someone else, you often fall in yourself. Even the captain, a man who thought he was untouchable, learned that loyalty to a bully is a one-way ticket to ruin. Did this story satisfy your craving for justice? If you enjoyed seeing the tables turn on Brenda and the hard karma hit home, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this video with anyone who needs a reminder to treat everyone with respect, and subscribe for more stories of drama, revenge, and redemption. Thanks for watching.